everybody. Well, obviously my speech is about Ouija boards, and hopefully I can answer anybody's questions about what you want to know about it. Most people are worried about whether or not these things are harmful. You know, can you use them without spirits coming through? They're afraid of things becoming a portal situation, you know, opening up a gateway, things like that. Well, the answer is no. And the reason I say that is because you are not opening anything that you wouldn't open with yourself, with any other tool that you go into investigations with, which would be a K2 meter, voice recorders, anything like that. You're opening up yourself to things like this. So, the earliest recordings of studying spirituality goes back to the 1700s, and that's just the earliest. I assume that it probably goes back even further than that. It just hasn't been recorded in any documentation that I've been able to find. But people have always been interested in connecting with spirits, crossed over loved ones, mainly crossed over loved ones. But, you know, over time they get interested in others to see what else they can find. And then, of course, you have the automatic writing with the giant planchette that looks very similar to the planchette that goes with the Ouija board, only it's bigger. And so you do the same type of motion. The idea is that they move through you and say to you what they're going to say to you, and it writes out. And then, of course, you have the original Ouija board that came out in the 1800s, and that is the picture of the first one. And then we start going into the movies because the interest starts picking up right around the 80s. It starts getting big. And so you have this movie, Ouija Board, and that started getting people that much more interested in Ouija. And then, of course, there was a second one. So it starts becoming a trend. It goes from just general interest, wanting to connect with the dead, wanting to connect with loved ones, but then the movies start coming out, it starts becoming a trend, people start getting interested in, you know, what else can we connect with? Can we take it to haunted places? What can we do? And so the interest just keeps building and building and building, and so do the stories. Stories start coming out of this, urban legends, you know, what happens when you use Ouija boards. The truth is, when people first started using Ouija boards, nothing typically happened back then. Even if they connected, there are no stories from back then that anything sinister or evil happened. There's no documentation about that. That's more recent years. This is more when religion started to put its hands in it and say, hey, that's wrong. Okay? So, and this is why I say that it's not a portal, it's not anything more than any other tool that you would use. If you, and actually I think the worst tool, to be honest, when you go in unprotected, you don't know what you're doing, you go into a haunted place and you say, oh, touch me, pull this, pull that and stuff, you're opening yourself, and that is more dangerous than any tool you could ever possibly use. So the board itself, that's all it is. It's just a tool that allows you to talk to not only the dead, but I personally use mine for connecting with my spirit guides because they know this is the most comfortable way for me to connect with them. They come through, it's a lot easier. And so, and mine is almost a daily use. Now, the question I get from people is, how can I tell the difference between, is it my spirit guides or is it a ghost? What is it coming through? You know how people talk to you on a frequent basis. You get to know how someone comes across to you, how they speak to you. So if you're trying to speak to them and somebody's coming through and they're saying different things that doesn't sound characteristic to your guides or whoever it is you normally talk to, you know it's not them. That's how you can tell the difference. The other thing is, with Ouija boards, is it's kind of a toss-up, the information that you're going to get, because if you do connect with the other side, they tend to lie. Because there's a difference between ghosts and spirits. Ghosts are still here. They haven't crossed over. Spirits have already crossed over. Spirits will come through always with loving messages. They are the ones that can tell you some things, but they're not allowed to tell you lots of things about your future, because that's still up for you to pave that way. So they can't say, yeah, you're gonna, 10 years from now, you're gonna buy a brand new car. No, they can't do that. They can give you guidance, they can give you love, they can, give you warnings if there's something that's imminent that they think that you need to know. But otherwise, they butt out, because that's the way it is. They have to. Ghosts, on the other hand, they'll come through and tell you everything under the sun. And let's be honest about it. Once you die and you're on the other side, wouldn't you do the same thing? Let's tell them this. Because it's fun, right? Well, they do the same thing. And they can't tell you anything about your future. If they're stuck here, they don't know what your future is. How could they possibly know that information? There's no way. So a lot of the information that comes through when you take to haunted locations, some of it may be valid, but a lot of it's going to be BS. And, you can go in there also with dowsing rods to do the yes, no. You can do the flashlight thing, yes, no. Same thing. You're still connecting with them. It's not any more dangerous than those. They're all the same, they're tools. And they have the ability to tell you things, they have the ability to lie to you. So what comes into play when you're doing this sort of thing is using your intuition. That is the strongest tool you can possibly use. This way, when they're coming through, you can discern, are they telling you the truth? And you can also discern whether this is someone trapped on this side or somebody that's passed to the other side. So, and the important thing to remember too is that they can all read your mind. They can all read your mind. And in my experience of using boards, I always ask them telepathically rather than out loud. Like when you're sitting with a friend, don't tell your friend what you're going to ask. Do it in your head. Because then the answer that comes through, you know that they're not the ones manipulating it on the other side of it. Because they don't know what you asked. So if you get a valid answer, you're like, whoa, that might be something. So, it's just an interesting, fun tool. But here's the thing. They can be dangerous, but so can K2 meters, voice recorders, pendulums, anything that you use to contact spirit, including yourself. And this is where the spiritual protection comes into play. And I know that the girl before me was talking about protection, so, you can go through the various things. I personally have this pendant that I wear when I go on investigations, which is the Archangel Michael pendant. That's my personal choice. I love Archangel Michael. I connect with him, and so anywhere I go and I ask him for protection, I go before I go in and when I come out to make sure that nothing attaches to me and goes with me. Because I've had hitchhikers before in the past, and they're not so fun. But okay, so you can, whatever method you personally, spiritually believe in is going to be what you go for. Okay? Wiccans like to use things like sage, sea salt water, and I use those actually in my home periodically as well to keep things out, to make sure, and this cleanses negative energy as well. So not just spirits and ghosts and things, but energy, because when you're out in public, when you go home and you've been around negative people, you're bringing home negative energy. So if you keep your home cleansed with these things on a periodic basis, you walk in and it's like a load just drops off. Like instant peace. Like anytime anybody comes over to my place, they're like, I just feel so calm and peaceful here. And I'm like, of course. I don't allow any of that crap in here. I create a boundary with these different forms. But I use the sea salt water in a spray bottle, walk around and spray like everywhere. And I also do the sage, walk around. All negativity must exit. Leave a window open so they can exit. Only love and light allowed here. This is what I do. But everybody has their preference. And then of course sweetgrass is just as effective as sage. The Native American culture, I think, uses sweetgrass more than we use sage. But I have both, so it's either or, whatever you want to use. And of course, I have a book, and it's about my personal paranormal autobiography. It's my whole entire life because I have been experiencing things since I was 8 years old, and I've also been making and using Ouija boards since I was 8 years old. And I can honestly tell you that I have never had any kind of crazy incidents from using it, not once. I have had spirits talk to me. Well, actually, I had a couple ghosts talk to me in one of the places that I lived in because they didn't like somebody that was in the house at the time. The guy was very negative, and they felt that he was dangerous for me, and he wanted him to leave. And so they, at the same time they were talking to me, saying, you got to get rid of this guy. That guy and another person was in the kitchen, and right at that moment, a pitcher went right across and just went onto the floor, as if verification to get that guy out. And, it wasn't a short time after we found out what a bad guy this guy actually was, so we were like, oh man, So it was a warning, they weren't trying to mess around with me or anything. They legitimately felt that I could be in danger, and so they wanted to tell me, hey, heads up, get him out of here. So, sometimes they can give you valid information. I've been warned about a car accident that I was going to get into that day. I had no idea what they were talking about. But I think that was more probably my guides coming through and telling me this. But they were like, you're gonna get in a fight or something like this, and I'm like, what do you mean? I'm going to work. Well, I ended up getting in a car accident, and I jumped out, and what did I do? I started yelling at the guy, right? And they had warned me that I was going to be in pain, and I'm like, what? Well, yeah, after the car accident, so then I ended up having to go for physical therapy and all kinds of stuff like that. Keeping a barrier up in your home, doing the ritual cleansing, because then you've got everything, you're cool. If something follows you home, it's not going to go in your house. But back to the protection, if you're going to use anything, including yourself, if you're going to contact spirit in any way, shape, or form, protect yourself. Because you can avoid attachments, you can avoid portals, all of these things if you just protect yourself. So whatever your spiritual belief is, look into it. You can find, I guarantee there's protection spells, there's prayers, there's all kinds of things in all the different belief systems. And as long as you stay protected, you shouldn't worry about portals and things like that. The board is no more dangerous than any other tool. And like I said, you're the most dangerous tool there is. But again, this is my personal autobiography, and I do have it at my table. It's only $5. Alright guys, thanks for sitting in on the lecture. Come visit my table. Get a copy of my book. Thanks guys.